Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Dark Alpha's Need by Donna Grant, narrated by Victoria Mcgloven. Chapter 1. Sly Stag Pub, Dublin. Nothing about the mellow music drifting from the speakers calmed Torin. He hadn't been able to shake the dark feeling hanging over him since Rawdon's last mission. Something wicked was coming, and for the first time since becoming a Reaper, he was worried. Torin sat at the bar, his gaze moving across every face in the tavern. The Fae Others were targeting Reapers. He and his brethren wouldn't stand by and wait for the others to find them. No, the Reapers were going after the bastards, on death's orders. His gaze met those of his fellow Reaper Aisling across the bar. Her long black and silver hair hung down her back in dozens of small plaits. She wrapped her fingers with their long red nails around her glass. Her disinterest in those around her had males and females alike doing everything they could to get her attention. Aisling lifted the glass of whiskey to her lips and took a long drink before winking at him, even as a female light rubbed her breasts against Aisling's arm. Torin hid his smile and gave a slight shake of his head. They weren't here for fun. They were at the Sly Stag to find someone. Being out among so many Fae, both dark and light, was dangerous for them now. Once, the Reapers had been dismissed as monsters that Fae children's parents used to keep them in line. The Reapers had hidden in plain sight for centuries, walking among Fae and humans alike without anyone the wiser. When they became Reapers, they left their lives, families, and friends behind, allowing everyone to believe they had died. Secrecy was imperative. Death made sure of that, because she had foreseen that some might take advantage of knowing a Reaper. Torin finished off the last of his ale and leaned his arm on the bar as he shifted sideways to look at those behind him. This wasn't the only Fae pub in Dublin. There were others in the heart of the tourist area, where mortals walked in without realizing just what type of establishment it was. Fae had mingled with humans since first coming to the realm. Some Fae, as well as a few druids, had created certain places that were deemed neutral ground, so the dark and light Fae, as well as drow and me druids, could mingle without fear of being attacked. The Sly Stag was such an establishment. Torin had visited it before becoming a Reaper. He hadn't liked it then. He didn't like it now. If the Fae Council came to fruition, they wouldn't need places like the Sly Stag. Light and dark had been getting along fine in neutrally defined pubs for eons. They could get along outside of them, too. Well, most could. The bartender caught Torin's eye and jerked his chin toward the door. Torin's gaze fell on the dark female as she came to a halt just after entering. Her gaze darted around quickly, as if searching for someone. Or hiding. When she ducked into one of the back hallways, Torin knew she was hiding. From what was the question. He slid his gaze to Aisling to find that his fellow Reaper had seen their target as well. Torin tossed money onto the bar to pay for his drink and walked to where the dark had gone. Aisling untangled the light Fae from her arm and made her way toward the other hallway. This wasn't the first tip they had tracked down in an effort to find the others. Fae everywhere were talking about the group, many touting that they were involved, when, in fact, they weren't. The original Others had been comprised of a drow and me druid from another realm, a me and drow druid from Earth, and a light and dark Fae. The six had combined their powers to wipe out the Dragon Kings and taken over Earth to claim the magic. Ultimately, the Dragon Kings had triumphed, though it had been close. The Reapers had joined in to help the kings defeat the others. When the others were all gone, everyone believed the threat was over. Unfortunately, the Fae, as well as a group of druids, were attempting to form their own factions. Torin was ready to find the dark female and get whatever information she had, if she had any at all. He wasn't optimistic after so many failed missions. On top of it all, they had to keep an eye out for the Fae Others, who were most likely trying to track the Reapers and do away with them. The hallway made a U, complete with private rooms. Light and dark lovers often met there for dalliances they didn't want their kind to learn about. The rooms were locked with magic, preventing anyone but those renting them from entering. Thankfully, that didn't stop Torin and Aisling from finding their target. Death, whose real name was Aerith, was a goddess. She only had 2 requirements for someone to become a Reaper. They had to be skilled warriors, and each of them had to have been betrayed, the betrayals leading to their deaths or murders. Aerith would come to them right before their last breath and offer them a second chance as a Reaper to do her bidding without question or fail. Upon acceptance, Death gave a tiny portion of her power to enhance what each already had. A Fae could veil themselves for seconds at a time. A Reaper could veil themselves indefinitely. Their magic also exceeded that of any other individual Fae. The others combined their magic, which was why the Reapers were concerned. Aerith was the judge and jury for all Fae. She decided when it was time to reap a soul, and that's when she sent the Reapers. It was Death who kept the balance within the Fae. Disrupting that in any way could have dire consequences. Torin waited until he was in the hallway alone before veiling himself. The Fae could teleport into the pub, but not into the rooms. It was done to guarantee the privacy of those renting the spaces. However, that didn't stop a Reaper. He jumped into each room, searching for the target until he finally found her in the back corner. To his surprise, she was alone on the bed with her back pressed against the headboard, staring at the door as if she expected someone to come through it at any second. Her black and silver hair hung past her shoulders and draped over one side to show that the lower half was shaved. To his amusement, he spotted silver stud earrings in the shape of mushrooms. She wore a white tank top beneath an oversized dark grey sweatshirt that hung off one shoulder. The sleeves were rolled at the cuff and pushed haphazardly up both arms to reveal several bracelets on each wrist, varying from beads to silver and gold. Black jeans were tucked into knee-high biker boots, complete with silver buckles at the ankles. She had a classic, delicate beauty that unnerved him. Her large eyes were framed with thick lashes and gently arching eyebrows. Her high cheekbones seemed to have a sheen that made them stand out even more. Her full lips were a deep mauve color. She was unbelievably stunning. The longer Torin watched her, the deeper his frown grew, and the more rattled he became, though he couldn't discern why. He stayed until Aisling appeared. As another added benefit of Aerith's powers, Reapers could see each other while veiled. They couldn't, however, speak, or they would be heard. Aisling jerked her head to the side, motioning for Torin to jump back into the hallway so they could talk. He found himself hesitating after Aisling left. Something about this dark female didn't sit right with him. It could be her fear. It was so obvious he could almost reach out and touch it. "About damn time," Aisling said, when he met her in the hallway with their veils dropped. Torin glanced at the door that led to the room. "What do you think of her?" "I think I'm tired of spying on people." Torin jerked his head to Aisling, her quip not what he'd expected.
"What?"
"Nothing," she said with a shake of her head. "She looks petrified."
"I
"Want me to talk to her?" Torin thought about that for a moment.
She might respond better to you."
"But?" Aisling asked, her brows raised.
"I don't know. There's just something off about her."
Aisling rolled her eyes. "Here we go again."
"I know what you're thinking, but it isn't going to happen."
She snorted. "You, Baladin, and I are the only Reapers who haven't found our mates. The last time I went on a mission with Catal, he found Sorka. He also kept saying there was something about her."
"I'm not Catal, and I'm not looking for anything."
"Yeah, well, it doesn't matter if you're looking or not. When love comes, it'll knock you off your feet whether you're prepared or not." Torin studied Aisling. They all had pasts. Once they became Reapers, they were no longer light or dark. They did, however, keep the colouring of their former lives. Aisling had been a dark Fae. She never spoke of her past. Hell, none of them did. But if the nightmares she had meant anything, then she had one hell of a former life that hadn't loosened its hold. Yet he didn't think her comment about love had anything to do with her past. In fact, he suspected it had something to do with Xanath, though Aisling would probably never admit to it. She, even more than death, was intent on finding the royal light fae who had been tortured by his aunt and Queen of the Light, Usil. Aisling put her hands on her hips and sighed as she looked around. "Stop it."
"Stop what?"
Torin asked, frowning. "Looking at me like I might fall to pieces any second," she answered, as she glared at him with her red eyes. Torin bowed his head in acknowledgement.
"We might not be blood, but we're family. We look out for each other. Always."
"You think I don't know that?" she asked, a tinge of anger in her voice.
"I think we all need to be reminded that we aren't in this alone, that we have others to lean on."
"I've always been alone, Torin. I've only ever been able to depend on myself, until Aerith offered me a position as a Reaper. Death may have found us, but it was Owen who brought us together." Torin smiled, thinking of that day.
"We've survived so much. We'll get through this."
"First, we need to see what information, if any, our target has."
"I've a feeling she won't open the door."
Aisling twisted her lips. "We can't wait for her to come out."
"She's hiding."
"Then we need to find out who she's running from. Or we can jump into the room and alert her to who we are." Torin ran a hand down his face.
"We don't have time to wait."
"Nope."
"Feck,"
he murmured. Aisling shrugged and knocked on the door. Torin glared at her. She smiled, shooting him a sassy look. Time stretched as the target within didn't utter a sound. Aisling knocked again. Then, in her best helpless voice, she said, "Hello? Is this room open? I'm trying to get away from someone. All the others are occupied." Torin turned to lean against the wall, crossing his arms over his chest when the target still didn't reply. Aisling threw up her hands in defeat. Torin really didn't want to teleport into the room. He didn't want anyone to know about the Reapers, not to mention the female could start screaming. Or she could attack them. Neither option was viable. But neither could they wait her out. If she had information, they needed it. Immediately. And if she knew who the Reapers were, then she was already dead. Death didn't let anyone who wasn't part of the Reapers know of them and live, unless there were special circumstances and very good reasons. Torin dropped his arms and turned to Aisling.
"I tried,"
she whispered. That only left one choice. Chapter 2. What the feck had she gotten herself into? Breed pulled her knees up to her chest and dropped her face into her hands. Stupid. That's what she was. Utterly stupid. And it was going to get her killed. She dropped her head back against the headboard and looked out at the room. Dim lights in the ceiling pointed to the red leather sofa on the opposite side of the space. The walls were black and accented with black crown moulding. The floor was black tile with a large red and black rug spread over it. Crimson satin covered the large four-poster bed, and black bindings hung from each of the corners. The room was made for lovers. It wasn't a place she could stay indefinitely, but at the moment she had nowhere else to go.
"So fucking stupid,"
she said to herself. At least the walls were soundproof. She didn't want to know what was going on in the rooms around her. Her eyes snapped to the door when someone knocked. Breed's heart slammed into her ribs, knocking against them in a chaotic cadence. The female voice that reached her did little to calm her nerves. Had they found her? Already? Breed's mind raced to find a way out of the Sly Stag and Ireland, although she knew they would find her no matter where she was on this realm. If only she could go to another realm to escape. She'd had narrow calls before, but she knew there was no getting away this time. Because once they found her, they would inflict unimaginable agony upon her. For centuries. Another knock sounded. This time, the voice asked for help. Breed hoped the woman wasn't really in trouble because nothing would get her to open the door. Humans liked to call it fight or flight, and she was absolutely in flight mode. No sooner did that thought go through her mind than a man and woman appeared in her room. Breed instantly jerked back, though there was no place for her to go since she was already pressed tightly against the headboard. Her gaze moved from the dark female to the light male. Neither looked like soldiers, but the fact that they had gotten into the room when they shouldn't have been able to meant they were either from the others or they were Reapers. Either way, she was fecked. Her stomach clenched in dread. "Hi," the woman said, as she tilted her head of black and silver braids that fell to her waist. She wore a black moto jacket with a red shirt beneath, paired with black jeans that had rips at the knees, along with the most beautiful pair of combat boots Breed had ever seen.
"We were hoping you'd open the door so we could talk."
"We only want to ask you a few questions,"
the man said. Breed's gaze moved to him. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing more subdued attire, a black tee showcasing his impressive build, denim and black boots. His shoulder-length black hair was longer on top and shoved to the side as if he had run his hands through it. Something about his silver eyes held her ensnared. The more she gazed into the beautiful orbs, the calmer she became. She frowned, thinking he was using magic, but she felt nothing. He was clean-shaven, his rugged looks catching her attention from his jawline to the intense way he watched her. It took everything Breed had to pull her eyes from him. She returned her gaze to the female.
"How did the two of you get in?"
"That doesn't matter," the woman said. Breed snorted.
"I beg to differ."
"There isn't a place we can't get into,"
the male answered. The woman snapped her head to him, shooting him a glare. Breed watched the exchange with interest. She glanced at the male again, not allowing herself time to linger over his handsome face. Just a few seconds ago, Breed had thought her heart would burst from her chest, she was so scared. Now, she was asking questions. What the hell was going on? The woman blew out a breath and looked to Breed once more. "As we said, we have questions." "So?" Breed said, realizing then that she was with two very powerful Fae. "I'm not answering anything." The man took a step toward her.
"You're hiding. My guess is from the others."
Breed's stomach dropped to her feet. They were blocking the door, preventing her from leaving. Her blood ran like ice through her veins. She slipped from the bed, getting to her feet and prepared to fight. If they weren't soldiers from the others, then they were, in fact, reapers. Feck. Feck, 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 feck.
"Easy,"
the male said as he lifted his hands, palms out in front of him.
"We're not here to hurt you."
The woman moved to the sofa and sat, crossing one leg over the other. She drummed her long red nails against the leather. "He's right. In fact, we could be the ones who save you." Breed shot both a dubious look. "You actually expect me to trust you two? Do I look like a fool?" "You look like a woman at the end of her rope with a long drop below you," the female stated in a dry tone. The man lowered his arms after frowning at the woman. He caught Breed's gaze.
"You're right. You have no reason to trust us, and we have no reason to trust you."
"You're the ones who came into a locked room," Breed pointed out. "A room, I might add, that no one is supposed to be able to teleport into." The woman quirked a brow. "I'm only going to say this once. We're not with the others." Breed barely bit back a reply. She wanted to believe them, if only because she might not be alone in this, and she really didn't want to be alone. But if she went down that road, she was setting herself up to be betrayed. Besides, wanting to ask her questions didn't mean they were going to help. Likely it was the opposite. If only she could believe they were reapers, then she might take a chance with them. Yet a doubt lingered in her mind. Hearing the reapers were real didn't mean they were, and she knew for a fact that the others and their soldiers were very, very real, which meant the two in her room had to be from them. Breed didn't have formal battle training, but she knew enough to stay alive. Her best chance was getting to the door and then the nearest Fae doorway as fast as she could. It would be a long shot. The female looked bored, but Breed wasn't fooled. The woman had her entire attention focused on Breed. And the man, well, Breed didn't want to think about him. She quickly went through the few scenarios of getting to the door. None of them were good, and most ended with her capture. That simply wouldn't do. She would rather die than be brought back to the others alive. She knew what happened to the Fae the soldiers went after, and she wasn't going to be one of them. Just as Breed started to dash for the door, a scream rent the air from within the pub. A second later, there were more. It was so loud it penetrated the soundproof walls. "Shite," the woman said as she jumped to her feet. "We've got to go."
"Not yet,"
the man said. The female rolled her eyes and disappeared. Breed glanced at the exit. There was a chance she could get around him and make it to the door, but would she be able to open it? And what would be in the hall when she did? She knew those terrified screams. It meant the soldiers had found her. The woman returned and looked to the man. "It's them. A group is checking every female in the pub. There's another kicking indoors. We've got seconds until they reach this room." The man's head swung to her. Breed backed into the corner at his penetrating look. She couldn't fight these two and the soldiers. Then again, if she attacked the couple, perhaps they would kill her. It would be a mercy if the soldiers couldn't get a hold of her. The man started toward her. "You've got to be kidding," the woman said through clenched teeth. Breed lifted her hands and released magic. The man deflected the balls of power with ease. Before she could get off another orb, he was upon her, moving so close he had her pressed into the corner. She had to tilt her head back to look at his face.
"Not a word,"
he ordered in a deadly tone.
"Not a single syllable."
"This is madness," the woman said as she joined them. To Breed's utter shock, the two stood in front of her as they faced the door. Each of them wrapped their fingers around one of her wrists. She thought it was to prevent her from getting away. When two soldiers kicked open the door and stormed inside, Breed expected a battle. Instead, nothing happened. The woman turned her head to Breed and put her finger to her lips. Breed's breathing was ragged, her nerves stretched to the limit. She began shaking the longer the soldiers were in the room. The man's hand tightened on her a millisecond before the two soldiers exchanged a glance. They raised their hands. When they did, the man turned to Breed as the woman vanished. Breed parted her lips, but he put his hand over her mouth as a scream bubbled up. With her next breath, she found herself in a field. The man released her. Breed stumbled back several steps, glancing around her to see nothing but some trees and the vast night sky. Her chest heaved, the screams of those within the pub still ringing in her ears. "What just happened?" she asked, hating that her voice shook along with the rest of her. The man's lips flattened as he shook his head.
"They were about to use magic to see if anyone was veiled."
With those words, Breed realized that her first conclusion had been right. She was with two reapers. If she feared the soldiers, she was absolutely terrified of the reapers. She looked to her left, then her right, searching for some way to get away. "There's nowhere you can go," the woman said as she walked up behind Breed. Breed whirled around so fast she tripped and twisted her ankle, sending her crashing to her bum. The woman sighed dramatically. "We just saved your arse. If that doesn't prove we're not with the others, I'm not sure what will."
"She knows who we are,"
the man said. The woman threw up her hands and rolled her eyes. "Brilliant! Exactly what we were trying to prevent. You know what this means, don't you?"
"What did you expect after what just happened?"
he asked her. She pulled a face. "Oh, I don't know. Maybe we should have left her there."
"We hadn't asked her anything yet."
"And look at us now," the woman snapped. Breed used her magic to heal her sprain as she listened to the two reapers. 6 months ago, she had been like any other Fae, believing that the reapers were only a myth, stories told to frighten the young into behaving. The others spoke often and loud to anyone who listened that the reapers were real. Still, knowing something and coming face to face with it were two very different beasts. The woman put her hands on her hips and turned her back to Breed as she shook her head. The man faced Breed, watching her with his piercing silver eyes.
"You needn't fear us,"
he told her. She got to her feet, testing her bad ankle to make sure it was healed. I disagree. You came looking for me. Doesn't that usually mean you've come for my soul?" "Usually," the woman replied, without looking her way.
We already told you. We just wanted to ask a few questions.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?